Hello and welcome, everybody. Today we are going to be discussing the musical genius of David Bowie. This is a stream that I'd been planning to do for almost a year now. I've mulled this over ever since the Bob Dylan one that we did a while back, looking at how Dylan uses harmonic sequences to create an effect and support the lyrics that he writes. And for whatever reason, I've only managed to get around to it now. And coincidentally, it is chiming in at the same time with Academic Agent and John Dee's Deepest Law on David Bowie, where they're primarily looking at, they're going through the whole of Bowie's life and his albums, and they're primarily exploring maybe the lyrical quality, or at least kind of engaging not too deeply with the harmonic aspect of it. And so, what I wanted to do in this stream was just touch upon a couple of songs which give us a key indication of how good a songwriter Bowie is. He manages to do things that with the sequence of chords in his songs that's very unique and in pop music, and really brings something to the songs, gives them a very distinctive feel, and to create very unique emotional experiences, which I think is they're extremely hard to do and to replicate. And this, in part, is perhaps why people consider him a great songwriter and why he has had such an enduring legacy as well. To do that, though, what I think is really important is that we have a standard by which to compare him by, because if we just explore his compositions by themselves, we may not fully appreciate how brilliant they are. So what I'm proposing to do initially is to explore some of standard versions of composition within pop and rock music and move up in complexity until we get to Bowie, and then you will see how awesome some of his songwriting is. So before we get going, just say hello to a few folks. Hello, Vingle. Hello, Chris Doak. Hello, Byron Brand Stepwise. Good to see you all here, and good to see you lurkers also. It's always great to have you. So I'm going to be using my trusty ukulele. So it might sound quite different from the synthesizers and whatnot, but it will be fine because we're going to use it for our harmonies. That's what we're interested in here. And so you can see on the screen here, I've got up some chordal sequences. Many pop songs will use a standard set of 4 chords. Now, these 4 chords tend to be the tonic, which is the first chord in a key, the dominant, which is the 5th chord, the equivalent minor of the tonic, and then the subdominant, so the 4th chord. And these make up your basic building blocks of most songs. We can see here With or Without You by U2. And what this song does, and this is typical of a U2, is that they'll go through these 4 chords and it's quite pleasing. And yes, Fingal, I am just about to play it, so you can hear. I'm going to play these things so you can hear them, and it's not just going to be mathematical kind of working out what do these things mean. We'll hear what they mean, as it were. So here we go. So this is With or Without You. See the stones set in your eyes, see the thorn twist in your side. I'll wait for you. Slide a hand and twist a fade, and a bit of nail she makes me wait, and I'll wait without you, with or without you, with or without you. So you get the picture with that. We'll also do another one before we briefly analyze it. So another song, very famous song with this sort of chordal progression, is Don't Stop Believin' by Journey. Although they introduce, this is not a good time to restart. They introduce another minor chord, the equivalent of the 5th chord in the key. So it'll go something like this. I'm just a small town girl living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere. Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street lights, people. So this chordal sequence is very simple, but it works quite effectively, I think, because what you have in there is a very powerful opening. So that's quite powerful, that's forceful, it's strong, the tonic to the dominant. But then we end up with this minor chord. It's the equivalent, it's the minor equivalent of the tonic, right? So C and A minor. And if we look here, these are every chord's made up of a triad, I should say. The first, the third, and the fifth. So the key of C, the C chord is C, E, G. C, E, G. And the minor equivalent just changes one note here from the G to the A. So normally if you were writing a song and you wanted to end a sequence, the powerful way to do it, the one that gives the most resolution, would be the 5-1. It's very driven and determined and very satisfying to hear. But what this chordal sequence does is it moves from the fifth chord to the minor equivalent of the first. So we don't get that resolution. Something's lacking, something's missing here. There's a sorrowful tone. We weren't able to get the completion that we wanted from this sequence. And then it moves into so it uplifts it. And you can see here that we've got the ACE. Well, the E becomes an F. It just one note brightens it. So if we go through this chordal sequence again. And the final cadence is a subdominant, an F into the C. And that's typically called a plagal cadence or an amen chordal progression. So amen. It also has resolution, but it doesn't have quite the same force as the dominant to tonic one, does it? It's softer. It has a degree of space within it, maybe reminiscing or nostalgia or a sense of being in eternity with the amen idea. So we don't ever get quite full resolution with this chordal progression. And although it has strong positive chords, it has strong harmonies mixed in with a minor one, which brings a tinge of sorrow. And I think what that does then is it becomes a good chordal sequence for songs which are about frustrated emotion or painful emotions, which are always bursting to just get out but can never quite reach full completion or satisfaction, such as a song like With or Without You, where the singer is wrestling with their love for this who they're singing about, or Don't Stop Believing. It's in the face of loneliness, in the face of a really depressing situation that one has to keep holding on and essentially power through. This chordal sequence manages to affect that through the relationship between the chords. And I think we can hear that and we can see it in this way. But that's quite simple, right? Many pop stars or pop songs will use it because it's a very simple chordal sequence that it's easy to write for as well. But let's then move up to another level of complexity, and this is by Dire Straits, Mark Knopfler, Romeo and Juliet. I'm going to play through the verse and the chorus, and then we'll talk about why it's more complicated than the four chords that we've just heard before. So, a love-struck Romeo sends the streets a serenade, playing everybody low with a love song that he made. Finds a convenient street light, stands under the shades, and something like you and me, babe. How about it? Juliet says, hey Romeo, you nearly gave me a heart attack. It's underneath my window. Hey love, my boyfriend's back. Shouldn't come around here singing up to people like that. And anyway, what you gonna do about it? Juliet, the dice was loaded from the start, and I bet when you exploded in my heart, I forget. You know the movie song, when you gonna realize it's just that the time was wrong, Juliet. Nearly all the way through. So this is automatically, we can see this is a wee bit more complicated than the U2 song in its harmonic progression. So the opening, Knopfler does this thing where he introduces a rhythmic complication. If we think about it like this. So at the last beat of the bar, he introduces a transition chord, the D chord, to move between the G and the E minor. We're going backwards and forwards at this bit. And this binds the G and the E together. The emotions that he's expressing, the words that he's singing, they have both a strong positive connotation. They're about a love song, but it's a song of remorse, right? Because as we'll see later in the chorus, it's this love was never destined to last, as indicated by the title, Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lovers. It was going to end in disaster, and the song proclaims that the time was wrong later on. So there's this the G and the E minor characterize this opening, but he doesn't. So he's not just going through the four chords in the normal sequence. And then he jazzes it up again, moving to the C. C, D. Then the first two phrases of the chorus are the four chords in sequence. So it's quite powerful there. He's using that. He's introducing it back in. But then he jazzes it up again. He's going in directions we don't necessarily expect where he's going to end up. And then he introduces the A minor, which is a new chord for this song. It's not been played before. And it introduces a new idea, or at least brings more clarity to it, because it's a new sound that we're getting where our attention is drawn to what's being sung. When are you going to realize that maybe the time was wrong, Juliet? So it's kind of crystallizing everything that he's sung before in a new way with much more impact and power. When you're gonna realize it's just that the time was wrong, Juliet. And then we're back round to the beating heart of the harmonic rhythm of the song. So he's tying in this new idea with everything that's gone before, and it characterizes or interprets everything. So it's quite a complicated chordal sequence that he's got going here. He's got new rhythms and he's mixing and matching where the chords go. However, we should note that he stays within the same key, so he's basically using the same chords as U2, but he's putting them in a more complicated arrangement. So then let's take now Tangled Up in Blue by Bob Dylan. And this will be our last one before we get to David Bowie. And what we're going to see here is that Dylan is going to move between keys. He's going to elevate the song by moving to a new key. So let's hear a verse of this song. Early one morning, the sun was shining. I was laying in bed, wondering if she'd change at all, if her hair was still red. Her folks, they said our lives together sure was gonna be rough. They never did like me, mama's homemade dress, but the blanket wasn't big enough. I was standing at the side of the road, rain pouring down on my shoes. Heading off of the East Coast, God knows that pays and dues. Getting through, tangled up in blue. So, as we can see here, the first phrases, essentially the first section of the verse, repeats the same chords over and over, ending up on the G. It's quite energized. It's because it's a Mixolydian key, which means that the seventh note is flattened, and it gives this sense of openness and space, of an expanse to explore and traverse across, which is quite good for this song, which the character moves from location to location through time, quite an extensive periods of time, in pursuit of this woman. So it's quite good for that, and for this sense of it's an ever going on situation that he's in. He's trapped in this cycle. But then, so we get to this G, but then he moves into the proper key of D with the A chord, sharpening the seventh note, the C here. So that brightens the song. It gives it a new sense of energy and intensity. And so the words in that part of the verse gain on a new significance. You feel like we're going somewhere, and there's a natural climax to what's being said. These are an even more powerful outpouring of his emotions, or maybe the dialogue that's going on, or more significant events in the story. But then we come back round, right? He goes back down to the Mixolydian. Tangled up in blue. So we are brought back into the cycle. So he uses a key change here to really shift emotional gears, intensify what's already being felt. The light-hearted adventure shifts into a deep and meaningful love song, essentially, of heartbreak. So in some ways it's less complicated than Romeo and Juliet in terms of its chordal sequences, the uniqueness of them, but this key change really elevates it in its use of chords. So we can see a clear progression from With or Without You to Tangled Up in Blue by Bob Dylan. But here we come to David Bowie, Ashes to Ashes. It's only taken 20 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play through the verse and chorus. Well, it's essentially a verse, really. We'll play it through, and then you can see we've got lots of analysis here to do. So I'll play it through once, and then we'll analyze it. Do you remember a guy that's been on such a lovely song? I heard a rumor from ground control. Oh no, don't say it's true. Got a message from the action man. I'm happy, hope you're happy too. I loved a long needed love, saw the details following. The shrieking of nothing is killing dust. Pigs up Jap girls and synthesis, and I ain't got no money, I ain't got no head. But I'm hoping to kick, but the planet is glowing. Ashes to ashes, funk to funky. by, wasting an all-time low. So, what do we have here? I think you can already hear harmonically. I hope you can hear harmonically how much more diverse the chords are and the various ways he's jumping out musically compared to what we've heard before. It's a very distinctive and expressive sequence that we've got. And you can see this in the range of chords that he uses, right? We've got a classic opening 4 chords, but then he moves down to this F here through to the key of C. So we're starting in the key of G, then into the key of C. Then we've moved into the key of A, down to G, down to C. So we've got a lot of movement here. How do we analyze this? Well, the first thing to say, I think, he's moving between a number of keys, but he's doing so in a way that isn't absurd or really disruptive. Imagine if he had done something like this. So remember a guy that's been on such a it just wouldn't work. Or if he had gone the shrieking of nothing is killing, just pings of Jap girls and synthesis, and I ain't got no money and I ain't got no hair. Like it's out of tune, it doesn't quite work. Maybe he could do something with that, but it doesn't really flow. The genius of what Bowie does is he moves between keys, but between chords maintains a continuity of notes, or at least one note will be continuous. So, for example, there's this section here where, so we've got, I'm happy, oh, you're happy too. And then we're coming to this bit here with the G and the E. But no smoking pistol. So this is a key change here from the key of C to the key of E or A. It depends how you want to read it. But you'll see, although that there is a shift in notes here, so we've got the G to the G sharp, D to the E, so it's brightening it, it's moving it up a key. The B remains the same. There is one note at least which is continuous. The others clash. This one stays the same. So it isn't harmonically out of the blue. There is some sort of persisting thing. And then we see this with the next chords, right? So we've moved up to E. So A, so we're in this A chord here. Then we're back to the E, and you'll notice that the note E stays the same. Then we move down a key, back to the G chord, but the B's are remaining from the E's, and then over to the D, within which the D's persist. There's D notes within the G and the D. But then he moves down a chord again, or a key again, down to F. So, and then plays the C. And this is a sequence of plagal cadences, so the 4 ones, the Amen chords. So I'll play it through again, and you'll hear that although we're moving down keys, there's a degree of preparing the listener to the next chord, insofar as there's notes that cross over, and in so doing, it doesn't sound out of place. It actually works. So let's try it. So. So I hope you saw that didn't kind of jump out of nowhere. However, it isn't what we expect. We're trained but also feel naturally that there should be certain chords appearing at certain points. We want the four chords to be the framework in which we listen to music, or that's at least what we anticipate will come next. So by moving between keys and allowing for a degree of continuity, Bowie manages to create a really unique effect. I would suggest that this effect is something like dislocation and alienation. This is made. Think of the lyrics of the song. Major Tom is an individual who we're told is stranded out in space, and all the promise and all the hype that we have in Space Oddity is gone. He is a shell of himself. There's nothing left. Essentially, the shrieking of nothingness is killing me, or is killing Jap Girls and Synthesis. He doesn't. He's no longer optimistic. He's in a place of anguish and feels hollowed out from what he was. This could be captured by the idea of floating in space, going in different directions. By moving between keys very seamlessly, which is achieved through the continuity of notes between these chords, Bowie's able to create this impression of having no home framework. We don't know musically where we are at. We're going in one direction and then another, like we would if we were floating in space. Like we have no home, no musical home. And so neither does Major Tom. He is isolated and alone in this place. It also then creates this kind of it creates this openness. It also creates there's a kind of emptiness. We're going up and down, but we can never anchor ourselves to one point. But then the up and down also in itself is part of the sound. So we start in the G. Then we move down. This is quite a shock to the system. It's almost like a jab, I find, the F. Because it clashes with the previous D. If we see here, we've moved from D to C to F sharp to F. So these would, if you think, oh sorry. So these notes really clash with each other. So we've experienced something which is, in some ways, it's not pleasant. But it's quite forceful and powerful, and it's a new idea or a new emotion, but we've come down. We've got a shock, or we're back in reality. And it reflects something of the song, because the first opening bits are about, oh, have you heard about Major Tom? There's a rumor about him. Then we hear the message, I'm happy, hope you're happy too. There's a sense, it's a plagal cadence again, so it's this amen, this nostalgic, it's got this kind of reminiscence quality to it, but with this minor, there's a kind of mourning in there, or undercutting maybe the positivity. But then we move up keys. We've reached a new zenith, a new idea that he's explaining the desolation that he's encountering here. We've moved down a key here, and we're cascading down now. To the chorus. So you could see this as the rise and fall, the high and the low of drug taking. He had his rush, he's managed to get to the top, and then it all comes crumbling down. And and the song in many ways is about this. He's talking about, I was hoping to kick, but the planet's glowing. He tried to get up, didn't work. and he's having an all-time low. And we can see this idea in the second verse a little bit as well, in that there's variation um, in how he does it. I'll sing the second verse and then we'll discuss it again. And once we've done that, we shall move to Ziggy Stardust. But yes, let me get this right. I wanna get to tell myself I'll stay clean tonight. The little green wheels are following me. Oh no, not again. Stuck with a valuable friend. I'm happy, hope you're happy too. One flash of light, but no smoking pistol. I never done good things. I never done bad things. I never did anything out of the blue. Want an ex to break the ice. Wanna come down right now. Ashes to ashes, funk to funky. You know me, the Tom the junkie. Strung out in heaven's high, waiting on all time low. So we have this movement of, oh no, not again. So he doesn't want this to happen. The little green wheels are following me. I believe this is a drug reference of some kind. There's this kind of plaintive cry of I'm happy, I hope you're happy too. It's almost defiant or trying to believe it's true. And then there's the flash of light. But then we have a really interesting thing musically. Whereas before we had this, so in the new section that's heralded by the highest keys, we had the shrieking of nothing is killing dust. Now we've got I'm never done good things. He's changed the melody. He's inverted it. Before it was a kind of upwards motion towards certain notes. Now he's going down the way. The shrieking of nothing is killing just pictures of Jap girls. So up the way. Whereas the other way is I've never done good things. So he's turned it over, so it's an even more important idea we're getting this time. And then it gets elevated again with the change of keys. Want an X to bring the ice. Wanna come down right now. And the E minor there plays a really key role because we've had this new melody with coming down the keys. It's this real outpouring of lament and struggle. He just wants to be free of this, and he can't be because we're going back round to the refrain. Ashes funky, funky. We know Major Tom's a junkie. Strung out in heaven's high. So at that moment we have a burst through. He wants to break through the ice, and we actually feel this musically, but he's unable to. So I think what we can see then is musically what Bowie does is quite breathtaking. Roger Scruton talks about how we can judge the beauty of music through objective standards, things like its pitch, its rhythm, its harmonic sequences, and so on. When you compare what Bowie's doing in Ashes to Ashes with these chordal progressions, moving between keys to create distinct emotional moments within the song, compared to With or Without You, it's I think you have to say it's just absolutely fantastic and stunning, the development of the music. And he does this in other songs such as China Girl. I was thinking about exploring it, but I think it'd probably be too much to do tonight. And he does it in a way that I haven't seen many pop musicians do before, even very good ones like Dire Straits, right? Because it's really difficult to move between keys in a seamless way. And that's the thing. He does it in such a way that although you feel totally dislocated and alienated and not quite sure where you are, by keeping a continuity of notes, it gives us a single stream of consciousness. It's one person experiencing this musical floating in space, alone, isolated, and going through all manner of strange and weird feelings. So that was Ashes to Ashes. Let's do Ziggy Stardust now, and we'll see that in some ways this is a much simpler song. As you can see from, this is the chordal arrangement here. Just ignore this for a moment. This is the chords of the song. So it's not nearly as long and it repeats quite often. However, we'll see that the use of the chords that Bowie the chords Bowie employs are really quite effective in a very simple way. Here we go. Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Webb and Keeley, and the spiders from Mars. He played in left hand, but made it too far. Became a special man, then we were Ziggy's fans. But where were the spiders while the fly tried to break our bones? Just to feel like to guide us. When the kids had killed the man, we had to break up the band. So that I appreciate. I've jumbled up some verses there, but that is the gist of the song. And so what do we have? Well, we have the opening, and what we expect. I think this is the thing I want to get over. Often we anticipate certain musical chordal progressions, and what really great composers can do is take you in a direction you didn't expect, but it's better than what you could have imagined, and it opens you up to a richer musical experience. So we can see here G, B minor, C, D. If it had just been G, E minor, so we've got that here, that's what we might expect. That's what we had with bands like U2, right? So pretty straightforward, sounds nice enough, and it feels quite continuous. Or we might have expected a GD combination. So take something, a song like Eric Clapton's Wonderful Tonight. It's late in the evening, she's wondering what clothes to wear. So we've got G, D, a C, D, so that it could have been that. Bowie doesn't do either of these things that we might expect. Rather, he goes for the minor equivalent of the D chord, which is the dominant or the fifth chord in this key. So we can see here that, like D, it's got an F sharp. Like D, it's got a D, but it raises it by one note, the A to the B. It gives quite a different impression. So if we play the GD first, Ziggy played guitar. It's quite bright and positive. Or if we'd gone G, E minor, Ziggy played guitar. It sounds like a tense version of what we've got, but we don't feel we've moved anywhere in the song. Let's do it with the B minor now, how it's actually written. Ziggy played guitar. Wow, what a gorgeous chord that is. By moving to the B minor, which is not what we expect, but is possible because we have this continuity of the B and the D, so it doesn't sound out of place. It matches up with maybe other chords we would expect, or reconfigures the G. It opens up space musically. It gives a sense of, oh, we've moved somewhere beyond where we started, and combined with it being a minor chord, it's a sense of sorrow, and a sorrow extended in a way that we're feeling at this point. Um, so it gives it a kind of emotional depth, experiential depth. It's dropping it in there. But this wouldn't make sense without the rest of the phrase, right? We shouldn't just think of the B minor's importance by itself. Its significance comes from the whole phrase. So let's play the whole of this bit here. So moving from the B minor, we come back to the C, which is the fourth chord, and then to the D, which is the fifth chord. So there's a sense in which this brings us back to a place of safety, and we come then back to where it should have been. It should have been the D, really. So it's a restoration process. And I think when we match this up with the next phrase, we'll see this again. So this time we do move to the E minor. This is the second line here. Why can you play guitar? So here we have, he moves from the G to the E minor. So it's again, he's introducing a hint of sorrow or sadness. But then we go to the A minor, which is the minor equivalent of the C. So again, there's this restoration, or bringing back round to where it should have been, the A minor to the C, and then this goes back into the G. So it's a plagal cadence again. It's a 4-1. So this, I think, this sequence creates a somewhat nostalgic. It's like you're remembering Ziggy Stardust, right? And thinking fondly of him, but it's streaked with perhaps a sadness about that memory too. There's a fondness and a sadness. The fondness and the sadness is achieved by having both the minor and the major equivalents of chords within the progression, restoring, kind of laying into the sorrow with those minor chords, and then restoring it back round to the more positive sounding chords to create this warmth when you're thinking about the character. And this matches up with the lyrics. I do think it is a kind of recalling of a past memory that you and we find this often when we think about the past, right? We enjoy it, there's something nice about it, but it's often touched with a feeling of, oh, what could have been, or oh, I miss those days. That's what he's doing here. Ziggy playing guitar, jamming good with Webb and Keeley, and the spiders from Mars. He played it left hand, but made it too far. Became a special man, then we were Ziggy's fans. Even that moment where he played it left hand, but made it too far, and this is the chord we hear. So it's there's a tinge of, oh, what could have been, isn't it? But a shame that he went that direction. So that repeats, and then we get something which I haven't found in most pop music. Most of what we've looked at is the creation of one or two emotions in a sequence, maybe intensifying or shifting to a new idea. but it's all very continuous. So something like Bob Dylan's Tangled Up in Blue, as we saw earlier, he moves up a key here to intensify what's already being felt. Or in Ashes to Ashes, we looked at how the chordal progression always has a note which is in continuity with what went before, and this establishes a degree of smoothness and flow to the harmonic sequence, and thus to the emotions that we're feeling. There's no there may be different emotions there, but they're not kind of directly attacking each other. Ziggy Stardust then introduces a key change, which I think brings about something really special. Let me just, I'll play the end of the phrase, so, and then go into that bit again. The boy did he play guitar, but where were the spiders while the fly tried to break the bones? So what we have here is the C chord was the last one that we had, right? But then we move immediately to A major. This clashes because we've got a C sharp. If we put that, can I? So the key change directly clashes with what's gone before. He's not going for the continuity here. And he does this interesting thing where he then starts moving up and down. We start in A. So we're moving from the A to the G. I think we can see this here. Yes, so we've got the A. These are the letters at the top are the name of the chord, and then we've got triads here, and I've tried to line them up so you can see the movement. So we're moving from the A, C sharp E, to G. Making love with his ego. So we're down to F, and look, the F has A, but it moves from the C sharp to the C. So we're going back to the key of C, in a sense. It's a wrestling match. There's a struggle. We're moving up and down. It's pulling one way and another, the music here. And then rhythmically introduces this G as a transition again. So like Dire Straits we saw earlier, the G or the dominant moving between. Here, Bowie's doing something even cleverer, which is using the G chord, which could feature in both D or C, as a way of transitioning between the A and the F, between the C and the C sharp. So it's not a jarring movement between these chords, but it gives this sense of being pulled in one way and then another. And I think this gives this sense that what's gone before is under attack. We had this very fond, nostalgic vision of Ziggy Stardust, this messiah-like character who, although he's a bit alien, and that's reflected in the fact we're getting chords which we're not quite expecting, but are pushing us in new directions. He's a strange creature. He was brilliant. He was wonderful. We remember him with fondness. But then it's attacked, or he was attacked by this key, and it's pulling in two directions. We've got and it's very violent language that's used in this section. If I bring it up, so So let's see. So where were the spiders while the fly tried to break our balls? Just the beer light to guide us. So we bitched about his fans, and should we crush his sweet hands? So there's this opposing force here to Ziggy Stardust, something which is against him and seeks to do him damage. It promises to crush his hands and break our balls. It's a spider attacking a fly. It's a predator encroaching upon our memories of him and also of him at the time. When we come to it later again, making love with his ego, Siggy sucked up into his mind like a leper messiah. When the kids had killed the man, I had to break up the band. So there is this very strong sense of attack or conflict, and this is reflected in the battle between these keys. But then the A, the encroaching, the invading key wins. And we see this in the fact that we move then from back to D. And then E. D and E, D being the subdominant, E the dominant in the key of A. So A is one out over C. And this is seen in the demise of Ziggy Stardust, right? He's killed. We hear that bit. When the kids had killed the man, I had to break up the band. So he loses out, and this is reflected in the music. So he does something quite brilliant here. He moves between keys, and he then allows one key to win out, and this reflects the or helps to stimulate a new emotion. Before we had a nostalgic fondness, reminiscence about Ziggy Stardust. He wants to introduce this idea of conflict into the song, of a threat to Ziggy, of the dark side or the bad side, and change us dramatically. And he does this through the harmonic sequence. And I haven't come across any other popular writer or composer who's able to achieve such a dramatic shift in emotional temperament of the song, which works, which flows. So that is just a little sneak peek then into the absolute joy. Oh, and I should say as well before I close on that point, because you might think, well, if the key of A is so distant from C and it clashes, how then does it work? Because we don't expect it. Why should it still work for our minds? Well, I think he's primed us for it. If we go back to these chords here, so Ziggy playing guitar, jamming good with a weapon key, and the spiders from Mars get laid in that hand, but made it too far, became the special man. So that's the chord, the A minor. We're not expecting that, but it works within the song, and it introduces the keynote of A into the song, and importantly, A, E, and C. So it's relatively close to the A major. So it's giving us a hint, a warning of the threat that's coming within the song. He's priming us for it. We're prepared to hear something new, go in a different direction. But it's not totally strange to what we've heard before. It was already in there, we might say, or breaking in. So again, I think that's absolutely brilliant by him. Whether or not he was totally aware of everything he was doing here, I don't know. He might have just had a really great intuitive feel for the chord sequences. but certainly this is why it works on a kind of precise level. Why Bowie's going in new directions, his modulation between keys is successful and helps to support the experience of the songs, the emotions he's trying to generate through the songs. So yeah, that's my analysis for this. I'd be interested to see if anybody has any questions in the chat about this or anything else. Let me get off that. Yes, and it would be great to have had a band to help me. Maybe next time we can get some recordings or something done for this. Yes, so let's see. Vingle, hello Vingle, hype. Yes, I hope you were hyped for this. It's been good fun, and I just love seeing. I love being able to understand the brilliance of what somebody was able to produce, what they did, what Bowie did, what was in his mind. We can map out and really get to grips with. So when we hear it, we know what's going on at a musical level, and just gives a new appreciation for it, for his brilliance. And these were just two songs. You'll find that in lots of his other songs as well. I mentioned China Girl. That's really another excellent example of this. Of course, it's not every song he did had these chordal sequences in them or brilliant harmonic writing, but this gives you a flavor of why he was brilliant. Thank you, Chris Oak. How was the event? I'll answer that at the end. I'll come back to that. I'll see if there's any other musical questions coming up. So yes, the A minor. Did I say the wrong chord here? Maybe. We've got CM Piano 2 here. Good to see you, sir. Yes. So we have very little change between these three chords, which is really exciting because it means because you've got the A, C sharp, E, because you can do a lot with them then, right? And you can keep a degree of continuity, but take it in new directions. Roger Scruton, again, I keep going back to him. He encourages us to think of music as motion in imagined space, and I think, and he's getting this from Aristotle, essentially. For Aristotle, music is motion vertically in pitch and horizontally in rhythm. And different motions can correspond to different kinds of emotion. Think of the words, right? Emotion. On a previous video, I discussed how ancients and early moderns thought of the passions as motions of the soul, motions towards things and away from things. And every passion, whether it be joy or sorrow, desire and fear, they have their own specific motions within the soul and within the body. So music as a form of motion can mirror these and thus evoke these within the soul. For Pythagorean theorists, there's an imitation of what's heard within. And this then can map onto the universe as well. Everything which has motion produces music at some level. We can't necessarily hear it, but the planets in their motion produce music. When our motion, whether that be in our souls, in our physical bodies, is in alignment with it's in alignment with the order of the other motions, then harmony is produced, right? You can have so that means that your character, your temperament, your soul can be in harmonic order with the cosmos. with indeed with God, is right. So, and Vingel's already hit on the music of the spheres here. So, when we think of music as motion in imagined space, we can think of it in these terms that as we're developing the music, in we want to have a degree of continuity, so it's the same journey that we're on. But given something like these three chords that you were just mentioning, C and piano 2, we can take it in exciting directions by just changing one or two notes. So it's a and Bowie's really great at doing that. So that's part of what makes him great. And as you'll know, many orchestral composers are very adept at doing this. What I think is unique here is that Bowie's one of the few who's a very popular musician and composer who brings this to this format in a very short space. If you think Ashes to Ashes, what is it, 4 minutes? It's not an hour-long symphony, and he's able to do this. It's really quite impressive. When will we be able to order your album? That's very kind of you, Byron Brand Stepwise. I will say that I have uploaded some music at various points on Twitter and Instagram. I've tried to write some of my own songs. They're very fantasy based, and as an articulation of the dispossession that many of us feel, trying to use some of the techniques I've been talking about here. I'm not convinced that I'm quite as successful as Bowie on that front, but who knows? Maybe one day I will be able to produce these into a listenable form. I'm a wee bit limited with the ukulele, as you can imagine, but it's good fun, and I do find it very. It's great to play other people's music because you get to bring into being again something which was in somebody else's mind, but at the same time, it being able to produce some lyrics of your own, some chords of your own together, and it to kind of work is also a really wonderful experience. I guess it's true of all sub-creation. Um, I'm sure the artist probably feels something similar too. So maybe one day we'll get that out there. I'll talk a wee bit more about these sorts of things in a little bit. Oh, so yeah, that's right. That's right. So as you say, there's very little change in the notes. So then that means that the tonality the changes in tonality are not obtrusive, but they do they aren't necessarily expected because we're thinking in these four chords, right? But you're still able to do it. Oh man, sorry. Attempt to say everything sounds the same to me on the ukulele, but when you got to Ashes, things started to sound unique. Well, that shows the brilliance of Ashes to Ashes, I suppose. It's a really great. It's just a brilliant song, and what you will find is most songs do sound harmonically pretty similar. Most pop songs, they use the same four chords. They might jazz up the order in which they're played, but fundamentally they're in the same key and they're moving in ways we largely expect. So I can definitely see why you would have that experience. Hello, Ivan. Good to see you, sir. Thoughts on Station to Station and the lyrical meaning behind it? Okay, let me get Station to Station up. I am not too familiar with this one, to be honest with you, I must shamefully admit. We can at least have a look at it, right? So let's. Hopefully you are able to see that at the moment. So let's see. The return of the thin white duke throwing darts in lovers' eyes. Here are we one magical moment, such as the stuff from where dreams are woven, bending sound, dredging the ocean lost in my circle. Here am I, flashing no colour, tall in this room. Overlooking the ocean, here are we, one magical movement. From Keitha to Malkuth one, there are you. You drive like a demon. From station to station, the return of the thin white duke. Throwing darts in lovers' eyes, the return of the thin white duke. Throwing darts in lovers' eyes, the return of the thin white duke, making sure white stains. Once there were mountains on mountains, and once there were sunbirds to soar with, and once I could never be down. Got to keep searching and searching. Oh, what will I be believing, and who will connect me with love? Wonderful, wonder who, wonder when, have you sought fortune, evasive and shy? Drink to the men who protect you and I. Drink, drink, drain your glass, raise your glass high. It's not the side effects of the cocaine. I'm thinking that it might be love. It's too late to be grateful. It's too late to be late again. It's too late to be hateful. The European canon is here. I must be only one in a million. I won't let the day pass without her. It's too late to be grateful, and so on. I need to go away and read this again because this is I wouldn't want to comment without really having thought about it a bit more. It's very provocative though, and I really love the use of he's quite interesting in the language he's using, you know, throwing darts in lovers' eyes, where we think of darts, Cupid's darts, as connecting lovers. So this is he's blinding them in comparison, which is a very powerful movement. And then there's this constant kind of engagement with. So you've got dreams being woven, bending sound. That's quite a fluorescent sort of idea. But then he talks about there being no color in this room. He's associated with he's kind of comparing himself to a protector at one point as well. That he's one in a million, and then there's this whole kind of side where it's not the cocaine. It must be love. It's it's again it's very evocative. What do you think he means by the European canon is here? I know that has been variously connected with fascism at various points, and I can't help but feel that this could be an illusion, but and the Thin White Duke does have that aspect as well. Yeah, so sorry I can't be any more specific, but it's very vibrant. It's very vibrant. Maybe if I do lyric analysis again, I will engage with that one. Because it seems like it would be a good one to do. So let's see. We've got a bit of a discussion here going on now. So Ivan, I really appreciate Bowie's music, but it's a cult history keeps me from diving into him. Somebody says Duke Valentino. Good to see you, Duke Valentino. Aleister Crowley reincarnated. Vingle saying that he didn't participate in occult ceremonies, while Valentino is saying he participated in numerous sex magics. I think I don't think he was on the same level as somebody like Mark Bolan was into the occult, right? Mark Bolan literally trained with a black magician or a dark magician, I should say, for a number of years and then saw his lyrics or his songs as spells which could weave he could use to gain well, they were words of power that he could influence people with. And I mean, that's not a bad way of describing pop music, right? It does influence people in very powerful ways and gets them to do things and feel in ways, uh, in a way that a potion or a spell might do. Um, I know Bowie was interested in that stuff, so, but that wasn't unusual for that period. It would be interesting to see how much of it um, really permeates his work. Did he see it in the way Bolan did, or somebody like a group like Black Sabbath and their engagement with, well, there's that classic Aussie song, right, Mr. Crowley. I'm always wondering with Bowie, how much of it does he actually believe, and how much of it is him performing a part. Whereas I really believe somebody like Bolan, although he's created character for himself, kind of really felt that was like that was an extension of himself, or something. I need to think more about that. Maybe I did talk about doing a video on Crowley, so maybe there might be scope in there for a kind of exploration of how it impacted Bowie. Yes, yes. I am very interested in this idea of music, songs being spells, because we kind of separate out the modern media from these kind of fantastical ideas, right? But if you think of the influence a TV can have on somebody and trap their minds, or a song can move somebody's desires to do something, why can't we see the singer as a sorcerer, the journalist as a conjurer, the the director as a as a wizard or a warlock of some kind, manipulating the minds and hearts of millions of people, such as love potions did, or whatever. Framing it in that way both shows us the amazing power of these things, but also can draw our attention to perhaps that this isn't these aren't these are not neutral technologies. It's not normal to to influence the minds of millions of people through images or through a song. And a song is particularly powerful because you've got the logos, the words, and the music, which is pathos, and they're joined together into something much more effective, impactful. It imprints itself upon the soul that hears it, even if you don't really engage with it. I really believe that certain kinds of music have certain effects upon us, like a spell would. We just don't think of it in those terms. But I think it's a useful cipher, especially when many of these guys, like Mark Bolan, was seeing it that way. Or if we think of Led Zeppelin, the Battle Forevermore, the song itself is seen as a kind of weapon of light against darkness. So they saw the power of these things. Of course, these guys were all into fantasy and whatnot. So maybe and Led Zeppelin. Well, you've got Jimmy Page was into Crowley, of course. So that's a definite connection. Let me move this up slightly. That's better. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's something I toy with now and then. Talking about modernity in terms of magical or fantastical categories might see reveal the true nature of these things in a way far more provocative and powerful than just by their common mundane secular names. Let's see. Yes, I agree with you. Um, he was a man of many masks. The same is true of Dylan to an extent as well. I'm never really sure how much Dylan takes his own stuff. seriously or not. He was very good at playing the press. uh, let's see. Yes, yes, that's right. I think the Stones definitely were. Sabbath are an interesting one because, as I understand it, Sabbath were interested in the imagery and the art of it, but they themselves were profusely against the doctrines, or at least a few of the members were, being practicing Roman Catholics. I think Ozzy tapped into it more later once he had left Black Sabbath. But so you had this weird thing where they themselves were not into Crowley. They weren't practices of black magic or things like that, but they really embraced the imagery of it, which is strange. You would you would think the band doing that would be advocates of Crowley, but they were the least influenced in some ways. Shamans of modern times, yes. uh, I feel like this is a rabbit hole we can go down here. Yep, that's right. That's right. Jimmy Page did buy his house. That's true. That's true. This was really just a harmonic study. I wonder if on the deepest law they've got into Crowley yet with Bowie or not. I haven't seen them all, so perhaps they have. I remember reading as a teen that Page bought Crowley's house in Loch Ness and found books bound with human skin. Sounds a bit much, to be honest. It sounds like a good marketing ploy, if you ask me. Adding to the mystique of both Crowley and Jimmy Page. Wait, are we talking about Jimmy Page here or David Bowie? I've lost track of who allegedly we're claiming was involved in human sacrifice. Let's be clear, it's allegedly. It's a yeah. Um, yes, yes, they did, and even something like War Pigs, right? Where Satan's a big player, is to bring divine justice against the War Pigs, and yeah, it's about the punishment of evil. It's very violent and gory what's going to happen, but then these men deserve it for the awful things that they've done to the human race. So yeah, they always take the side of. It's always framed in that way. I guess to an extent that's the Christian aspect of some of their band members. Yeah, I can see that. I think it's also quite compelling as well. It's if you think of the audiences that they're appealing to at this time, at that moment you have Led Zeppelin, you've got bands like Uriah Heep and Argus. Sorry, Wishbone Ash. Argus is the album. They're all tapping, and then in prog rock you've got Yes and ELP. They're all tapping into this imaginative world and exploring this the things beyond the material, but not just in a kind of spiritual way. I think we can divorce spiritual, which is often material with a wee bit thinking about the transcendent or feeling communion. It's quite peaceful, it doesn't disrupt, and the supernatural or the preternatural, which is agency within the world. And these bands are really tapping into that and using it to elevate their music and seeing their music as a part of that quest and invoking emotions through the combination of really fantastic songs with these fantastical images. So yeah, I can see why it would be appealing, and I guess the only thing I would add as well is it's a much darker set of archetypes that they're appealing to, and perhaps that in itself is I feel like they're saying something with that. If you look at a song like Paranoid, they're not really using Crowleyism or this kind of black mass stuff in that song, but it just expresses their kind of experience of life. Having grown up in Birmingham, maybe I'm sympathetic to their plight. Uh, yeah, maybe. Very dark. Yes, that's right. That's right. There's all these connections we could be making here. Uh, Maybe when the Crowley stream comes, it will. Yes, we will. Maybe draw some of these connections out. Who knows? Who knows in the current World Economic Forum who's linked uh to Crowley? Indeed, indeed. Yeah, yeah, maybe, maybe. I wouldn't give him all that credit. I think he would like that. Let's not do that. He doesn't deserve that. But let's go back up for a second. I haven't listened to Black Star, I'm afraid. The last one I listened to was Next Day, so I will go away and listen to Black Star because it is a very good album from what I've heard. Very, very dark. Um, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily about popularity. It could just be they found this interesting and cool, and it was a niche in the market, so it kind of played in both ways. If it wasn't going to be helpful, I don't think they would have persisted with it. But it seemed to be key to their success. So maybe it was a reinforcing thing. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. I think it's less important to Black Sabbath than, say, the imagery is to Led Zeppelin, for example. I think for Led Zeppelin, it seems to be key to their music itself, the branding, the style, the fantasy, in a way that for Black Sabbath, it's not as strongly tied. Perhaps it's just kind of what they do. It's not necessarily a kind of ethos or vision of life that they're trying to promote through it. But maybe I've just bought into Led Zeppelin too much here. Uh, well, that's a good enough recommendation for me to listen to it. You may say that I couldn't possibly comment. Yes, yes. Well, maybe listen to it while it's daytime then. Wicked Lady was another English band who pioneered that sort of aesthetic. Not as good, of course. That's interesting. It'd be interesting to know if Sabbath had come across them as well. Uh, I'm not going to go any further with the Crowley discussion here. um, there's nice, clean family fun here. Um, so that's the last of the comments. I'll give folks a chance to maybe ask any more questions or any more comments. In the meantime, let me go back to one of the first questions, which was Chris Stokes. Hopefully, he's still here. Um, he so the event for those of you who don't know, I was at the Witten over the weekend, and I was one of the speakers, which was a really great honor and privilege. I'm not going to kind of give a blow by blow because I think AA plans to do that at some point. Might not be tonight, given apparently he's been ill in bed for the last few days. He's gone down with something quite bad, I believe. But let's see. Has he said he'll be on or not? Well, there's a possibility. There's a possibility. It might be next week. Anyway, I thought it was really great. It was really fantastic, and there was a really good range of speakers who I felt all of them all of them did a really good job and pushed the conversation in new and interesting directions and gave the audience a lot to think about. There was different Although there were different points of view put forward, I felt that amongst the speakers there was a sort of direction or consensus um, coming through amongst a number of them, or at least they tied up together quite well. And you'll probably see the results of that in the coming months. But one thing that I think really did come through that I'm gonna roughly summarize and share a little bit of is that a number of speakers spoke about how if we want to move forwards as the distant right, we need to really engage in um, culture. And this isn't culture wars. We're not talking about that. It means setting out the literature, the music, the poetry, the theatre, the film, the philosophy, the the intellectual and creative energies which will influence the next generations of leaders and influencers and then permeate society. And in such a way, we people who are in a position of limited power may may see our vision come to fruition. And one of the important aspects of this, and I thought Rupert August, if you don't follow him already, you should, because he gave a really good speech where he spoke, and this was complemented by the final speech by Carl, um, which they focused on a recovery of Englishness, because in our society, the it seems like every other group can have their identity, can have their tribe. The Scots, the Welsh, the Irish. You've got movements like Black Lives Matters, etc., etc., and they're all pushing their experiences into the forefront. And at the same time, there's a strong feeling that, well, the English don't get any place at the table. They're just kind of expected to be there, but then are dispossessed of a voice. When actually we live in a country where for thousands of years these people have lived. The buildings and institutions that we see and engage with every day were born 1,000 years ago. Not many countries in the world, not many peoples in the world have that sort of history where they can look back and say, my ancestors built that, and we share the same values, we share the same land and and institutions. We have the same outlooks in various ways. They are in us and we are in them. And what they have is given to us. And we can recover this sense of Englishness through a restoration of mythic ideals and legends, such as King Arthur or St. George, Robin Hood, etc., etc. You may see in the coming months work done on this by a number of people to try and revitalize or revive some of these ideas in a sense of, or a distinct consciousness of Englishness, I should say. And that I think that's quite an exciting project for people to be involved in. To that end, that is something that I think if I'm going to really be throwing a lot of this channel behind because I think it's a really it's a movement with a lot of vitality, and I want to be a part of that, and I think it's an important thing to do. And I think it's going to be really exciting. You may see that on this channel, maybe on work collaborating with other people to do these sorts of things to develop this creative movement, reviving Englishness. And but if you want to see that happen, if you want to, if I'm going to be able to do this, I'm going to have some financial support from you guys. And in the future, I hope to open up membership to the channel, and it will really be a way to support me doing this work, which is I think is going to be really important moving forward. And it seems like it's the direction that the dissident right, at least in this country, is going to be taking in the near future. So if that's something that you would like to support, then I would be very grateful when the membership opens, if you could support, because I think we're, I wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. And I'll have more on that in the future when maybe these things start to get going. But yeah, it was an absolutely great event, and really the best bit was meeting many of the people who are part of the sphere, who not had the chance to meet before. And yeah, it was really nice staying up till 4 in the morning talking about uh, various things with people you've met online. And I remember chatting to AA at 4 in the morning about the psychology of preferring Coke and Pepsi, and debating with some guy about whether Ben Shapiro is containment or not. That was surreal. And then oh yeah, there was another guy who he was a top lad. He was telling me that there's going to become a point where um, the world's energy resources are going to run out quicker than we imagine, and this is also going to impact medicine because all our medicine's made out of oil. And as all the tin reserves have run out, we're not going to have much of a civilization. But the white pill is maybe a few people might survive. Top lad, top lad. Oh, is there anything else you guys would want to know? If you've got any other questions about the event, put them in the chat, and I'll answer them before I go. Let's see what other people are saying. Thank you for the question, Chris. Thank you, Ivan. I really appreciate of Apostolic Majesty. This Saturday, I'm going to be back on AM's channel for either the final or penultimate episode of the Silmarillion series. It's going to be really good fun, and it's just in time for the Rings of Power. So if you're looking for something else to watch, come and watch us instead. We're going to be talking about the fall of Numenor. So that will be great fun. So hope to see you there. And thank you again. And actually, the Wanderer was something that came up during the event as an expression of the dispossession of the English during, or the Saxons during that period. And the fact that it appeals to so many people today is interesting in itself, right? Pray for AA. Yes, yes, he's not doing well. Quite a few people have come down with something. I've managed to stay okay so far, but it's funny because actually the week before the event I was quite unwell, but by the time of the event I was fully recovered. So I wonder if I've built up some immunity to whatever this is because of that. Let's see. Did I meet any Norwegians at the event? I met a guy from Sweden, but I don't remember any Norwegians, I'm afraid. There may have been some there, but there was quite, I mean, there was 150 people or so. So it was almost impossible to meet everybody. But no, just a Swedish guy. He was pretty cool. He looked a bit like Elon Musk, and so that was a bit surreal. But yeah, he was the only Scandi I met. And one of the really surreal things was, I'd go up to somebody and we'd chatting, and he'd say, "Okay, what's your name?" It's like Nathan, and then they would say, "Oh, you're the Nathan Hood, Nathan CJ Hood." It was very surreal, knowing that there's people out there, actually meeting people who know me through YouTube or Twitter is very, it was very, um, very nice and very surreal. Am I the events patient zero? I don't think so, because I was I was fully recovered by the event. It had been a number of days, so I'd be very surprised. But no, there was actually, the Swedish guy said he had caught something on the plane, so I'm going to say it was him. He was certainly coughing a bit, so yeah, he's my bet. I hope to see the episode live. I cannot become a member yet to access the videos freely, but your videos on Tolkien really help me in understanding Tolkien's work and reading LOTR. Well, that's excellent. I'm really pleased to hear that. And yeah, you should try and tune in live, and you'll be able to contribute to the chat then and ask questions, which is always good. And it's just so heartening to hear that you read Lord of the Rings as well through the series, which is just, that's what it's for, I guess. So yeah, good man, good man. Thanks, Fingal. Uh, so yeah, I think that's all the questions. So as I was saying earlier, looking forward to doing some stuff on reviving a sense of Englishness, and Tolkien in his own way. I know there's debates about whether he was writing mythology for England or not. I don't think that really matters at the end of the day. Even if he wasn't, his work was very much a revitalization of many myths and legends which are important not just to the English but to European culture more generally, and to our identities. And this is one of the key tasks for us moving forward. So that's something I'm going to be doing a lot more of, and I hope you will be along for the ride. And if you like what you see, you'll be able to support it as well. Oh, final few comments coming in. Oh, thank you, Vingo. And I must say as well, thank you for all your promotion of me during unpopular opinions a few weeks ago. That was very kind of you. Good night to you, my good friend. Glad you could join us for some epic Bowie music. Also, I think there's a lot of criticism of the ROP, but I don't think they get to the heart of the matter. Too much modern and postmodern reading of Tolkien. I mean, you could do a whole stream on this sort of aspect. I think fundamentally, well, in part, I guess you're also you're referring in part to the kind of YouTube channels, right, that spend their time criticizing the wokeness in Star Wars and Doctor Who and Lord of the Rings. And what you actually find is, when you press these people on their political points of view, is that they're centrists or liberals of various kinds. They just don't like being lectured to, or the woke ideas, and they'll call it woke. That's what they're really reacting to. They're not traditional or reactionaries of any stripe. I do think this is a problem with Lord of the Rings, actually, especially the films, is that you've got people that they're presented in such a way. Well, it's a problem and not a problem. Tolkien writes a work that doesn't try to preach to you. He writes something which will stir something within you. And this is what a good fairy story should do. This is what George MacDonald, who influenced Tolkien very heavily, suggested. I'm not here to give you the meaning of the story. I'm here to write a story, and it'll if you read it with an open mind, it will awaken something within you. It will awaken music in you. It will be different for each reader. There should be a collective sense of what it's like. There should be similar emotions or ideas aroused. But these ideas, but I think the one problem then you have is if it's just awakening ideas in you, it can be transformative. But if you've got a limited framework for understanding a text, so say you're like a neocon, right, and you believe in liberty and democracy and so on, then when you read The Lord of the Rings, you're actually just going to zone out a lot of the reactionary stuff, the ideas of monarchy as being the ideal um, system of government for Tolkien, or the restoration of the true monarchy, um, or the relationship between Frodo and Sam. It's often framed as friendship or even as a gay relationship, whereas actually, um, no, it's like a master and servant framework. But many people miss that because they're reading it through a certain lens. So you need people then who are faithful to the text, who love Tolkien's work for what it is, and are able to maybe show you things within that story that you've missed yourself. Certainly for myself, that was part of it. When I first enjoyed Lord of the Rings, I didn't think of it as promoting a very different worldview from the one that we've got at the moment that dominates our society, for arguing for things like a very localized environmentalism against big industry, promoting monarchical ideals, emphasizing mercy and pity. That's something that we don't hear very often in any circles. um, and nor isolationism. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, I think there's a lot there that can be missed, and of course all the religious elements as well. I don't think, and kind of coming back to this point here that you make, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think like the film's bad. My point is more the very nature of the work and the unobtrusive or uh, um his refusal to try and impose his meaning upon his reader is laudable and really good, and it's part of what makes it great. But at the same time, it opens up the Lord of the Rings to be taken in directions that its author would never have accepted. That's what I think is as such as in the Rings of Power. So I think that's the issue with something like the Lord of the Rings, which maybe something like Conan the Barbarian, with its just upfront masculinity, wouldn't allow for. You can't read Conan and say, "Oh, this is promoting liberal democracy or freedom or something like that." You could probably try and, whereas people will try and do that to Tolkien, and yes, victim of his own success, as you say further down. Uh, Good to see you, Biaki. Nice to see you. I don't know if Sargon's been saying stuff online about this revival of Englishness, but yes, it was his talk that kind of brought this together. Uh, Well, to an extent, I don't think that's totally true. I think there'll always be some aspect of mercy and pity which is important. And remember, Tolkien's not saying like Gandalf's not like, oh, you should show forgiveness to the orcs. He doesn't say that, or to Sauron, but he does encourage to use to employ mercy where it's appropriate. So, for example, with Gollum, most of us probably would have killed Gollum, right? But the fact that Frodo spares him enables the quest to be complete. He wouldn't have got to Mordor without that. So that's quite an interesting thing to say by Tolkien, especially as he was a soldier himself. And I think that gives pause for thought, at least, um, about how we go about things. But that definitely doesn't mean we abandon conflict in its entirety. Think of somebody like Alfred the Great, who defeated quite convincingly Guthrum, the Viking. He could have had him executed, I suppose, but he showed him mercy on the condition that Guthrum converted to Christianity, which is super based, by the way. But yeah, so there was mercy there after defeat. He could have executed him, but he chose to show him mercy. And actually, that was very good because in the long run, Alfred and Guthrum became essentially the upholders of the peace between the Saxons and the Vikings along the borders. And it was with the death of Guthrum that peace collapsed again. So that mercy was quite important. You don't need to be sorry at all. I'm glad my comment section could be a place of conversation. Uh, you're very welcome, Ivan. And I have no idea who Laura Loomer is. I'm going to search her now, if I dare. I love how I go away from Tolkien to do a Bowie stream, but inevitably everything comes back to Tolkien. Or Lewis. Or Lewis. You guys know me so well. uh yeah, she does that a lot. But we love her for it. We love her for it. um Laura Loomer. I mean, she doesn't look that much like Gollum. Does she sound like Gollum? um I'm not going to go down that route. Okay. That is a good place to end, I think. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. I've really enjoyed it. I hope that you've learned something about David Bowie's brilliance in music and that you're excited for what's coming next. It's going to be I'm really optimistic and hopeful about what this community can do and the intellectual and creative richness which is going to be coming. It's going to be it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, but we can do something pretty epic here, and it's going to help so many people. God bless you all, and have a good night.